The pageant of American climbing history was one of rebellion, freedom, and danger. It took turbulent twists and turns as it starkly changed the climbing world. Climbing, due to innovations in safety equipment and technique, has become an accessible and realistic hobby for the urban adventuresome and can provide a way to stay in shape and have fun. The most important advancement in climbing has been the inception and development of American bouldering, as it has compacted a vast hobby into an athletic activity, increased logistical ease and public accessibility, and recruited new levels of popularity for climbing as a competitive sport. As a famous boulderer once said, climbing is the only cure for gravity. In order to better understand the transitional phases climbing embraced, its history can be separated into three eras. The first consisting of mountaineering and big wall ascension, the second being a sport climbing revolution, and the third following a rebellious and expressive form of climbing called bouldering. Rock climbing began as a means of transportation in the form of Victorian mountaineering, and only branched out to become more than that in the late 19th century in the popular areas of Germany, Italy, and England. In the 1920s, mountaineering began gaining popularity in the United States. Rock climbing, distinctly separate from mountaineering, did not gain popularity until the 1950s. America led the hunt for new techniques and developed its own grading system, the Yosemite Decimal System. In the 60s and 70s, climbers at Yosemite, a popular big wall site, started pushing the limits of free and aid climbing. Yosemite was the nexus of the sport climbing revolution. As climbing as a sport matured and its complexity increased, routes that were pushing the sport's boundary were getting shorter in length, due mainly to lack of endurance to do those hard moves for a longer amount of time. After the 1960s, when the focus was long multi-day and multi-pitch routes, climbers focused on harder and harder individual moves. In the 80s, the emphasis on difficult moves led to fixed gear, a safety improvement, and even shorter climbs. These events combined led to the development of a type of climbing called sport climbing, which focused on strength, technique, and agility to get up the wall. This new form of climbing was accepted fairly readily into the community, who was ready for a change in the traditional mountaineering. Sport climbing altered climbing history and led to indoor climbing walls being developed or accessible to the public, which amplified the hobby's popularity and augmented the pressure on it to blossom into a nationwide competitive sport. This pressure eventually forced strong climbers to look in a different direction for new challenges. Thus was the birth of modern bouldering. John Gill, a gymnast and a climber, pioneered the modern manner of bouldering, establishing unprecedented techniques and styles in the late 20th century. He first started climbing when his friend introduced it to him in Alabama and grew to be the world's greatest climber in the 50s. Gill was known for his ability to float, to gracefully convert his impetus from one move to the next, almost like a monkey. Bouldering became more popular and climbers explored new places. A man named John Sherman fashioned a place called Waco Tanks in Texas into a sort of bouldering mecca, all the while establishing the Vermin scale, a new difficulty scale rivaling and eventually superseding the system John Gill had devised. Bouldering became a competitive sport, indoor and outdoor, with contests and events starting to merge on a global scale. Chris Sharma severely redefines the limits of bouldering and sport climbing in the 90s, becoming the first professional climber to make real money from the sport. Climbing eventually adapted to fit emerging styles throughout history, resulting in innovations like bouldering and sport climbing. Bouldering became the most popular because of the focus on power, technique, and finesse. John Gill pioneered this powerful new sport, and people like John Sherman and Chris Sharma redefined it to be the popular hobby and competitive activity it is today. As Ernest Hemingway once said, there are only three real sports: bullfighting, car racing, and mountain climbing. All the others are mere games.